Hello Chain Gang, welcome back to the 4 Chains Travel and our 6 tips preparing for retirement travel. We intend this video to apply whether you are 25 years old and you read that Jack Kerouac book and you just want to get on the road, or you're 55 years old and you are just ramping up to make that final run at retirement traveling. I'm not sure, I shouldn't say this I guess, but if you're already out there and you're doing retirement travel, not all of this will apply to you, just being upfront and honest. Okay, let's get to the 6 tips. I should say these tips are a combination of things. They're things where Angie and I made what in retrospect were very fortunate choices, and we've really benefited from that in our journey. And then there are other situations where maybe we realize now that we're older and maybe have acquired a little bit of wisdom, we should have made different choices and we would be, keeping it positive, I guess, more fortunate. And tip number 1 is definitely one of those ones we could have done better. Tip number 1 is fill up your treasure chest now. All of our tips today are not going to be financially related because there are some ways that I think it is very important to prepare for retirement travel that don't have to do with cash. We are going to talk about cash. We're going to talk about what we feel is the easiest to comply with, the most steady and reliable way to save up some cash for your nest egg for retirement travel. And then we're going to talk about those other things. And this is actually one of those other things, because when you fill up your treasure chest, you are filling it up with transferable currency, because transferable currency is worth more than dollars. If the lighting in this video looks a little bit different than it did right before and right after, it's because we are re-recording this section and another one because of 2 things that have happened right after we recorded this. What happened for tip number 1 is that we found out about a family obligation in June. Our original plan in June was we were going to be traveling from Italy to Montenegro, but now we've decided we want to fly home to meet this obligation on June 11th. But we hadn't budgeted for that plane trip. And when you're in retirement travel, sticking to your budget is very, very important. So we reached out to our travel community, which thank you everybody for the great suggestions. A lot of them could have worked. This is the one we took. We found out that Virgin Flying Club is having sales, 50% off sales on certain transatlantic flights if you use points. Well, our response to that was, sounds great. We don't have any Virgin Atlantic points. And then people pointed out that there are transfer partners. We looked into our American Express membership rewards, which is a transferable currency, and found out they were giving a 40% bonus transferring to Virgin. So we transferred our points at a 40% bonus, got a 50% discount, and listen to this. We got a flight going from Bologna, Italy, to Charles de Gaulle in Paris, and then from Paris to Washington Dulles for under 9,000 points each. Now, to give you some perspective of that, literally just an hour ago, one of our subscribers asked me for a referral link for Amex Platinum. That link is going to give up to 175,000 points depending on this person's credit. And we just use less than 9,000 points each for a transatlantic flight. So that should let you know that transferable currency is more valuable. Just avoid the 2 mistakes that when you don't have a lot of money, you are likely to make, because we did. First of all, one of them is understanding that cards with annual fees are almost always cheaper than cards with no annual fees. Why is that the case? Okay. Well, the easiest example math-wise is a lot of the co-branded hotel cards that we talk about in our video of the best cards for retirement travel. And by the way, if you're already in retirement travel, I'm not going to reuse content. That's the video to look at if you're looking at the group of cards that you want to get together. What I'm talking about now is starting your retirement travel journey. So this is going to be a little different, but we mentioned multiple cards in there, and I'm sure Angie's going to put up some graphics of them. And all of these cards, the sign-up bonus was $95 to $99. And in all of them, we have gotten over $1,000 worth of free hotels. So it is cheaper to pay $95 and then get over $1,000 in hotels for free than it is to save the $95 and go ahead and shelling out the $1,000 in cash for that. And what I'm about to advise is an example of that. I am saying that if you are starting out, you want the American Express Green. Now, if you're a subscriber and you've seen that video already, you're saying to yourself, Jim, you don't even talk about the American Express Green. Did you just learn about it? No, I didn't. And I stand by the fact that it shouldn't be included in that. It is better to get the gold and then combine it with the platinum on Amex. But the reason why the green is a good place to start is as a much lower annual fee. You can get a sign-up bonus up to 40,000 points. And it does have some multipliers. And it is membership rewards points as opposed to some free cards that are not membership rewards points. As long as you pay off your credit card, which is important, and you maintain some activity with that, you're going to get down the line, probably timed with when you can afford it, a great offer for the Amex Gold. And then after that, you'll get an offer for the Amex Platinum. And that is a great way to tier up because once you get the Platinum, you can't go in reverse and get the lower card. So that's why I recommend you start with that. Now, the Points and Miles geeks right now are already typing angry comments, so I'm going to go ahead and address those now. I understand that orthodoxy is that you get Chase cards first because Chase has the 524 rule. You can only get 5 cards within 24 months. Yes, that makes sense if you're already in the game. But if you're just starting out, you're not going to have the amount of money to meet a bunch of sign-up bonuses and be handicapped by that 524 rule. So that's why I would start with American Express because right now what's going on with Chase, and by the way, we also have a video where we talk about this in depth, where we compare the Chase Ultimate Rewards and the American Express Membership Rewards as transferable currencies, and they're both great, and they're by far the 2 biggest transferable currencies. But in 2025, what's going on is Chase had a data breach in 2024, and their customer service dealing with that situation has been legendarily bad. And our community, if you look on Facebook or wherever or in the comments on these videos, there are a lot of bad experiences applying for Chase cards, and we certainly have had some ourselves. I wouldn't want somebody starting out to start their experience with Chase, get really frustrated, and then give up the dream, because your dreams are something that you should absolutely not ever give up on. Turn your credit cards into wings, not anchors. Credit cards are really a huge tool for us, and that's why we talk about them a lot in videos. But what we don't talk about is the other side of it. You know, when your parents say avoid credit cards because they're evil, although we disagree with that, we agree that it certainly can be. Credit cards need to be paid off first because there is a 20 to 29% interest. And in all the math and advantages we talk about with credit cards in other videos, none of that math works if you are not paying off your credit card at the end of the month. So don't get a credit card that you can't pay off at the end of the month. Don't buy anything that you can't pay off at the end of the month on that credit card. You might have think this TV at $300 is a great deal, and maybe it is, but if you're not paying that credit card charge off at the end of the month, you're going to be paying interest on it. It's going to turn into a much more expensive TV. So let's talk about this, though. It's a post that my cousin made on Facebook. She was 40, and it's a post I was really happy to see. She posted that she's finally an adult. She's opened a savings account. She's getting 2% interest. Boy, I was thrilled. The reason why I was thrilled is I know that a few years earlier, she was carrying a pretty big credit card debt. And we had had dinner, and she even admitted that there are months when she only made the minimum payment on that credit card. And that is really an anchor that can be so hard to get away from. So I called to congratulate her for getting out of debt, and she said, I knew you were going to call. Listen, I'm not out of debt, but I got really lucky, and I want to tell you why I did this. So she got lucky that she got $6,000 back on her tax return, and she described that as free money. So she took $4,500 of that $6,000, and she owed $14,000 on her credit card. And so she got it down to $9,500. And then she took another $1,500 and she started a savings account. She's earning 2%. Yeah, I know that's not a lot, but I've begun the journey in saving for retirement. Well, there's a lot to unpack here as to why that strategy is an anchor. Number one, you should never be happy when you get a big tax refund. Why? What you did last year was give the government a interest-free loan for that amount of money. In her case, $6,000, which might not be a lot to you, but certainly was to her. And she could have, if she would have done the right withholding on her checks, so at the end of the year she would have either owed a little or gotten back a little, she'd be in much better shape because she could have taken that $6,000 and put it towards her debt, and she wouldn't continue to pay what turns out to be 24.99%. She wouldn't be paying that on the amount, and the amount would already be lower. Now let's tackle the adulting $1,500 savings account. She is getting 2% on that. I guess that's good, except for the fact that what she should have done is taken the $1,500 and put it towards that $9,500 and made it $8,000 instead of $9,500. Why? Because she would be saving the 24.99% on that $1,500. So you subtract the 2% that she's earning, and she's still losing 22.99%. So don't be afraid of the math. Don't be afraid to ask your cousins that know about this stuff. Credit cards can be great, but they can also weigh you down and make the whole retirement traveler thing impossible. So let's get to number 3, that the difference between being rich and being poor is $36. Now, you may have thought that the difference was much larger, and maybe it is, but there's an important point I want to make here. Let's say you're 25 and you take, let's say you get $1,500 back. Let's take that savings account. Let's say that's what you got back on your taxes. And you really do the adult thing because you don't owe anything on credit card, and you invest that with a financial advisor, okay? That has really benefited us over the years. A lot of people just don't ever want to give any of their money to financial advisors. I think that's a mistake. But let's say you want to choose yourself and do Webull. Even if you signed up for Webull, and we do have a link below, I prefer you get a financial advisor, but you can do Webull. You get some free stocks by our link, so that's a thing. But let's say you do Webull, and then you put a blindfold on, and you throw darts at a wall, and on that wall you have the stocks from the Dow Jones and the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ, and you invest in the ones that you randomly hit. Your rate of return will average 10% over the next 40 years. Now, I am aware that this rule is actually called the cigarette rule, and I'm stealing everything that I'm telling you from another famous speaker. I'm changing it to the $36 rule because I don't want a whole lot of hate from smokers, but this is how it came about. There was a dialogue when he was giving a speech about the importance of saving money. The person who stood up, it turned out, spent $36 a week on cigarettes. Now, you can substitute cigarettes. My friend John McCabe spends that on Starbucks. It could be Starbucks. It could be video games. It could be anything that you can save or cut your expenses to save. $36 a week. And the speaker told this smoker, hey, if you quit smoking today and invest that $36, let's calculate what you're going to have when you retire at 65, which is the 40 years we're talking about. Now, I have found out subsequently from HR I'm no longer allowed to do this, but for the majority of my Domino's career, when I would have an employee that would smoke that I cared about, I would offer them money, like $1,000 or more, to quit smoking. The reason why I did it is I had somebody that was very close to me and I watched them die because they were a smoker, and you know, it's a pretty rough way to go. So I didn't want that to happen, so I would bribe them. And I can tell you it was not very successful. A couple of times it was, but the other 150 times it wasn't. I would say in training classes, when I would teach the same class that this person invented, I would ask people, if you save $36 a week for 40 years and you take the compounding interest, why? Well, Warren Buffett, who is rich, says that the difference between being rich and being poor is that rich people understand compounding interest and poor people don't. So this is an effort to make my employees understand compounding interest. So I'd say to them, if you reinvest the compounding interest, the dividends, and you don't take any of it out, and you keep reinvesting it, and you keep depositing $36 a week, what will you have when you were 65? And the most common answer would range between $50,000 and $100,000. So $36 a week, once a week for 40 years is $76,000, something like that. I'll ask Angie to put the actual numbers. I'm pretty close. But that doesn't include the compounding interest. And the truth is that a smoker, if you told them, hey, quit smoking and put that money in the bank and then you'll have $76 in 40 years and you'll be a lot healthier, blah, blah, blah. $76,000 in 40 years isn't going to get anybody to quit smoking. But the compounding interest means that you will now have over $1 million. So you can quit smoking and be healthy and become a millionaire, or not. It's just or Starbucks or whatever. I don't want to be highfalutin or anything like that. You can just save $36 a week and be a millionaire, or you can't. Now, tip number 4, treat your body like a video game character. Now, before you click off, if you don't play video games, I don't play video games. I'm going to tell you why I do this analogy. I took my nephew over to an employee's house who played a game, EverQuest, that my nephew wanted to play, and I figured he could teach him. And I really liked this manager, and I thought it would be a fun day. And this manager had an insane game room. It was him and his roommate, and they had desks, and they each had 3 screens so they could do whatever they do on it. And it was interesting to watch them play. And I thought it would just be like, boo, 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 boo. But what they were doing was called farming and preparing for a battle that was going to take that night. They were doing things to make them healthy. The equivalent for us would be exercise. And they were farming ingredients to create what they called a crispy, restless fish meal. I think that's what it was called. You can correct me in the comments if you play EverQuest. But the reason why is that meal had the most nutrients. It was therefore the best for them. And it gave them a little bit of edge when it came to the night. So they did all this exercising, all this farming to get this great food. And I couldn't help think to myself, what if human beings all made the same choices about their health as these 2 guys were making for their avatar, their video game character? Ironically, the roommate of my manager wound up dying of a blood clot from sitting in that chair playing video games too much. So, really scary stuff. But there's really a couple of aspects. There's the one you know about, which is weight. Why am I saying this in terms of retirement travelers? Well, your weight and your health really affects how much you enjoy traveling. I am now 56 years old. I'm 6'2". I'm 194 pounds. If you saw my Mexico videos a couple months ago, I was less than that. I've packed on a couple for the holidays, but when I was 48, I weighed 238 pounds. And I wanted to do the Cinque Terre hikes in Italy, and I wanted to enjoy that. It's supposed to be the most beautiful hike in the world. We wound up only doing one of them, and there was a group of us.
So now that's a great view of where we started this whole walk. See how far I can zoom in here. That is Montereysa.
And My daughter in her 20s had no problem. Angie and I struggled, not necessarily for cardio, but part of that, the just walking up the hill. Another person we were with barely made it, and then another person at our party took one look at that hill and said, wow, that's beautiful, but I just can't do it, and took the train back to the hotel. If you are not in good shape, there will be things that you can't do that are really enjoyable when you travel. There will be a lot of things you miss out on when you are recovering from just being tired. Retirement travelers all walk a lot. Retirement travelers live longer than people in traditional retirements. There's a great video that Brian and Carrie, who are retirement travelers, do. I'll refer you to them. But it's because a lot of it is the walking that they do, and of course, eating foods that are not the kind of foods you eat in the United States. But it really makes a big difference, and you can't enjoy those things if you're tired. At the end of the day, you want to reflect on a wonderful day, not just veg out because you're exhausted. Now, in terms of weight, there's kind of a simple formula for it. Now, you won't see this in any TikTok or Instagram or Facebook Reel or whatever these things are called, because there's no way to monetize this secret, so nobody talks about it. But here's the truth. If you burn more calories than you consume, you will lose weight. If you consume more calories than you burn, you will gain weight. Period. Now, there are other factors. I can tell you, as somebody who's 56, it is way harder to burn calories now than it was when I was 26 and 36 and 46. And certain physical conditions make it a lot more difficult to burn calories, but that fact never changes. The other thing that doesn't change is calories are not all created equal. Now, most of you know that. I learned it from traveling. I saw that in Italy, they were a lot healthier than the United States was, despite the United States being much richer. I saw that in Sardinia in Italy, you are 40 times more likely to live to be 100 than if you are in Mississippi in the United States. That's startling to me. So I wanted to travel around to find out, and I did not see what I thought I was going to see. I saw people smoking. I saw, more importantly, enormous amount of carbohydrate consumption and an enormous amount of alcohol consumption. So why is it that Italians don't have the rates of obesity, diabetes, and heart disease that we do? Now, just from my traveling, you can chime in. I think it's because they don't have the same sodium intake, because although they shop more often, they're not buying frozen or canned goods. And although they eat a lot of meat like us, it's not processed meat. And I think that may be the difference. Please chime in if there's something that I'm missing on that. So please, just imagine that life is a game. It's a video game, and you want to win that game. If you want to win that game, you need to get that crispy, restless fish dish, and you need to exercise, and then you will have an advantage over the people that you are battling to enjoy life. This analogy doesn't make a whole lot of sense, so let's move on to tip number 5. Don't pay the secret 100% mortgage rate. Now, you might be saying to yourself, what the hell is this guy talking about? Nobody pays 100% mortgage rate. Yes, they do. You might be saying to yourself, hey, I'm a renter. I don't pay a mortgage rate at all. Yeah, you do. And it's 100%. Let me explain to you why. When you make a mortgage payment on a property, there's two things. There's the principal and there's the interest. Your payment is split between those two. The principal turns into equity that you can turn in for cash. And that has been huge for Angie and I, because despite the fact that we did not make huge salaries, we bought a house when we were very young. It's not an impressive house. It's attached. It's not large. It was big enough for the two of us and our 2 daughters, maybe a little tight, but we managed just fine. And we refinanced a couple of times, and we eventually got equity in the house that now that finances our retirement travel. If you're renting, your rent payment 0 goes to principal, all of it goes to something else. So that something else is a 100% mortgage rate. Now, there are isolated instances where it's smarter to rent. If you move to a new area and you're taking a job and you don't know whether you're going to like living there, sure, rent for 6 months or a year or whatever, but then buy. For the overwhelming percentage of people watching it, the time to buy is now. You may say to yourself, oh, well, mortgage rates have gone up. They're not 100%, which is what you're paying if you're renting. And if mortgage rates go down, just do what we did. Refinance. Refinancing is very easy. What's important is to start building equity now, because that equity can be a huge factor in financing your retirement. Tip number 6, and this is the most important tip because I think everything else kind of falls apart if you don't have this, which is figure out what really matters when you can do something about it. So what really matters? Well, think about it. The reason why we are encouraging people to do retirement travel and why we're trying to make this contribution with this channel is that it can lead to happiness. All of our lives when we're working, what we're taught is that the important thing for retirement is to be able to save enough money where your expenses do not outpace your income, whether it's just Social Security or something more than that. That way you can live a stress-free life and enjoy your retirement. The problem is that I have noticed as I get older that there are people who achieve that dream who are not enjoying retirement. Right now, Angie is taking a relative of ours who we love and really care about on an outing. It wouldn't seem like a big outing to you, but probably is to her. She has achieved what we're supposed to have. She has more money than she has expenses. And so she doesn't have to worry about money forever, but she's just not happy. Well, why is that? Well, you have to ask yourself that question, but I know that this person has maybe never been out of the state of Virginia, has never been on an airplane, and only understands this limited, confined world, and over 90% of her time is spent complaining about her life, which is notable because of the fact that her life is supposed to be what we all want. Now, let me say as an aside, I would never have said that if I thought there was even a 0.5% chance that she would see this video. But that's something you should know about. If part of your retirement travel is YouTube, don't make videos based on what you think your friends and family are going to think, because they're not going to think anything at all. They're not going to watch your videos. So don't worry about that. Just focus on being authentic and getting through the message that you want to get across. So if achieving the dream that everybody talks about is not what makes you happy, what does? Well, I can tell you this. Because of my age, I've now had the experience of spending time at the bedside of loved ones when they are in their final days. And I can tell you that those people in that situation, they do not need to learn tip number 6, because you will notice that when you are in your last days, one of your, I don't know whether it's a gift or a curse, but you see what's important with absolute 20/20 clarity. And I've seen it many times now, but even if you talk to a doctor or you see a doctor doing a vlog or a podcast, they all say the same thing. Doctors who have been in the situation thousands of times will tell you that every person is different, and every passing is different, but it is absolutely astonishing how consistent the experience is in their final days, because they see this clarity and they know that time is limited and they want to deal with regrets. What do they regret? You would think, because people are so different, that it would be a very long and varied list, but it's not. It's only 3 things. three things. If you're a doctor and you're there thousands of cases, you will only see three things expressed. One is the regret that there are places that they have not gone and experiences that they have not had. You will never hear them talk about how they regret not having a bigger house or a fancier car or more cars or more houses. In fact, you will not hear them talk about possessions at all. They will never talk about material things because one of the things that their clarity gives them is understanding that none of that stuff matters at all. It doesn't matter in the least. But what does matter is they're not going to get a chance to see those things or have those experiences. So this is only three things. We're going to keep tip number 6 simple. It's pretty obvious that the solution to this issue is for you to see those places and experience those things now while you can, because that is what really matters. The second thing is that, and this may not sound directly related to travel, but it is, because if you're not happy with retirement travel, then what's the point? The second thing is that people want to make amends to people they feel they have wronged. Now, every single person watching this and the person that's recording this, all have people that they have wronged. That's just a fact. And I don't want you to beat yourself up about it. I think it's biological. Back in the caveman days, we were taught that to survive, we need to have survival instincts. So we have to be selfish in a lot of cases. We have to make decisions to provide a roof for ourselves and our family and provide food for ourselves and our families. But if we're honest with each other, we realize that a lot of the decisions were about things maybe that we didn't need, but we wanted, desires, wants. And sometimes we have the ability to block out when we're making decisions to acquire these things that we want and desire, that maybe if we were making that decision purely on the basis of what is right and wrong, we might have made a little bit of a different decision. And I can tell you that in your final days, this wall goes away and you see it a lot clearly. So it makes sense to keep it simple and, take a walk today, tomorrow, on the treadmill, in the woods, around the block, and think, if you were in this position, who are some people that maybe you want to make amends to, and just make those amends now. And then the third thing is that people want the people that they love to know that they love them. So pretty simple there. Just tell the people right after you like and subscribe to this video, tell the people that you love them. I talked about your family not watching YouTube. You'll want them to if you make videos explaining why and how, like we have, that you do retirement travel, because they won't understand this whole premise. And in our cases, another thing they don't understand is why we took a YouTube channel that was getting 1.5 million views a month and paying our bills and completely abandoning it to start this channel focusing on just retirement travel. Well, it's because we did the exercise I'm asking you to do here today, and we realized we can't spend the money that we get from those views. We can't take it with us. I guess we could spend it, but we can't take whatever's left over with us. But what we can take is the difference we make in people's lives. And some of those videos were very popular, but they were not necessarily things that made a difference in people's lives. So our last video was on the best cruise deals of 2025 and is doing real well. And I'm sure this video won't do nearly as well. There won't be the same amount of likes. Nobody's going to be sharing this video, but I just figure that if 2 or 3 people can experience a more joyful life and enjoy retirement full-time travel more because they've watched this, then, that video is a success in ways that maybe we don't traditionally think about success. Speaking of what's important, we got the holidays coming up, and we also have a wedding that I am officiating, and there's this engagement that I can't announce quite yet, but we're very excited about. And so we are going to take 2 weeks off, and then we will resume publishing a video every Friday at 8:45 a.m. And we will see you then on the 4 Chains Travel.